Welcome to the Almost Perfect Podcast, a celebration of fuck-ups, failures, and falling flat on your face. This is a podcast that believes you can learn from experience, but that experience doesn't have to be your own. Ha, I'm but perfect and I'm a functional fuck-up. Let's learn from somebody else's mistakes. And today we are learning from Khensani Mohlatlole. Now, Khensani is a fashion writer and a sewist whose work you've probably read on Bubblegum Club or The Throne or The Plug or a bunch of different spaces. But personally, I know her from a YouTube channel, and that's mostly what we talk about in this podcast. Khensani is incredibly knowledgeable and incredibly passionate about fashion, both local and international, but her channel actually has taught me a hell of a lot about South African fashion and a lot of the conversations around it. She's also very passionate about sustainability and fashion, and her channel teaches you a whole lot of different things from sustainability and fashion. The stuff like we chat about it, Harry Styles wearing queer-coded clothing, and you can even find out how to make outfits from the Barbie cinematic universe if that's your sort of thing. So Khensani's got a lot of information on her channel for you, and just in general, also one of my favorite Twitter accounts. Absolutely love her vibe. So this was such a rad chat. I really thoroughly fucking enjoyed myself. I think you're gonna enjoy it too. Whether you're someone who knows a lot about fashion or doesn't, and you're gonna enjoy this. There's levels to this. I think there's parts of it where it's like, fashion talk, and there's parts of it that will help you get into fashion and help you learn a little bit more. So I'm excited for you to hear that. And here's the thing: I don't think anyone would ever accuse me of being the most fashionable guy out there. Like, I've got my own style. I wouldn't necessarily call myself stylish, but I've got a style. I've got things that I like and that are noticeable, especially the wrestling shirts, the floral stuff, the fucking beach shirts, that sort of thing. I've got the things I like and that stick out to other people. And there's been eras of different kinds of bobs, but as I'm saying, I would never consider myself to be that fashionable. But recently I watched The Devil Wears Prada, and it did make me think, you know what, maybe you should engage with this a little bit more considerately. Maybe you should actually learn a bit more about what makes clothes good and what makes them last, and how to look after them, and how to actually, take stuff to the fucking dry cleaner, take stuff to the tailor, make it suit your body type. All those sorts of things are things that I probably, whilst I was doing a bunch of cocaine in my 20s, didn't really think about that much, like, was a little preoccupied. But now that I'm firmly in middle age, I'd say, like, I'm not gonna make it past 70. That's ambitious as fuck, especially with the state of the world. So 35 is middle age to me, and looks like I might reach 50. So I'm now thinking, when I'm buying clothes and that, about stuff that I want to wear, like, as I get older, like, as I mature, as I slowly fade out from fucking relevance and can just look like an old man. That maybe, I can buy clothes that are a bit more expensive and do last longer and just have different appeals to them, I guess. So, what else has been happening that I can touch on before we kick into this podcast? Oh yeah, it was Sona last night. I didn't watch that. I was at O'Brien's. They had a karaoke night. Also 32 rand drafts, so there's a little shout out for free to O'Brien's, because they're doing the Lord's work out there. But yeah, something happened at Sona. Did it not? It's all fucking bullshit anyway. Like, I know that's not like the most high level political analysis, but I can tell you what the state of the nation is. It's fucked. Like, we all know that. And what else I got written down here? I got Twitter. Apparently, we're only going to be limited to 20 fucking tweets going forward, which to me is perfect. Like, I can't imagine wanting to send more than 20 tweets in a day these days, because life's too fucking short, people. Like, just log out. Like, just let the fucking platform die. Personally, I just mostly use it as a space to promote this shit and occasionally take jabs at people that I fucking hate. Not exactly the healthiest thing, so yeah, the sooner the fucking better that shit dies. I'ma be happy. Probably. Like, and everyone's like, oh, but how are we going to know about the news? It's like, you probably don't need to know about all the news that you know about. Let's be real. There's nothing you can fucking do about most of it. So instead, you're just spending your day going, everything sucks. The whole world's fucked. Like old Fred Durst. That was a reinterpretation of break stuff there. Okay, I need to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by you, which means you can support it by going to patreon.com/almostperfect and support it for as low as $1 a month. And with all that out the way, here comes the Almost Perfect podcast with Khensani Mohlatlole. So how are you living, Khensani?
I'm good. I could complain, but not gonna.
I mean, you're welcome to. I don't really mind. That could be a bit of a shoulder to cry on, a bit of a therapist sometimes.
But it's like the same thing as everyone. Like, there's no power, there's no water.
Yeah, the just living in South Africa in 2023 stuff. So I get it. It's like everyone's going through it. Everyone's going to be complaining about it. So yeah, why add to that chorus of voices?
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, how you been? How's this year kicked off for you?
The year so far has been pretty good, I think. Or I'm choosing to be like dangerously optimistic about everything all the time now. So everything is amazing and it could only get better.
I mean, I think it's a pretty good strategy to have at the moment, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, how's your year going so far?
I'm taking the same approach, to be completely honest with you. Like, some things haven't quite gone my way, the way I would have quite liked, but we move, we live, we learn, we do all those things, and somewhere in the middle there's lessons to be learned and some progress in life, I guess, to be taken from it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I guess we can start from like where I know you from, which is your YouTube channel, and Twitter actually I think is where I found you first, but then through your Twitter I found your YouTube channel, which you've been doing for quite a while. When did you start that?
I know I started it like in the first year of lockdown, so 2020. Yeah, 2020 sounds right. Yeah.
Was it because of lockdown? You were like, I've got some
time. Yeah. Yeah, it's very like I think I started around doing like a lot of reading and stuff in that year, and I was like refamiliarizing myself with like my old interests and stuff, and I think I was irritating all of my friends by like speaking to them incessantly about this stuff. And then my mom was like, just start a podcast, please. Like, we're so tired.
So this stuff, what do you mean? I mean, I'm assuming you mean fashion, politics, history, culture, those sorts of things.
Yeah, that whole thing.
That whole thing, that one all-encompassing thing.
Yep.
So that was kind of the inspiration, but how did it all start? Like what actually got you going with it?
I mean, I had been writing freelance, I think, in that time, and there was just a lot of things I was like just thinking about. So like the one thing was like big Twitter discourse of the time was like the rich aunt or rich auntie aesthetic, and sort of seeing how upset people were that like all these girls my age, so they were like 20 years old, 19 years old, and that everyone felt like they looked way too mature, or they were dressing themselves up, or they just, they looked like old aunts and stuff. And I was just so interested in everyone's reaction to this. I had thought about writing it, and then I was like, no one actually reads. So let me just try my luck like speaking about it.
The sad fucking truth, man. Like, as someone who still writes, it's like I don't know like just what the numbers are and a lot about things. Thankfully, I don't, so that I don't even need to stress about that. Because when I used to know what the numbers were and I kept seeing them go down from year to year, that used to like impact my soul. But with your videos, they've just kept on growing. Like, you seem to have grown quite an audience, but I imagine when you started out, what was the response like? Was it a bit slow, or did you have like an immediate audience of people going, yeah, we fuck with you?
Yeah, I had like the inverse. So that first video, I think that did like 10,000 views in like the first 2 days.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It was so weird. Like I honestly was like, I was posting that like literally I thought like 5 of my friends would watch it and maybe we'd have a chat about it, and then it was like this whole thing. I don't actually think I've had anything comparable to that, which I'm kind of very thankful for. I never really wanted like a huge audience. I just wanted a couple of people to talk to about some stuff. But that was a really cool response to see like all different kinds of people, like the kind of people I would not have expected to engage with that, actually like, share their insights or tell me how dumb they thought I was or how interesting they thought that was. Overall, mostly a positive response, but very interesting. I think once you start hitting, like you hit a certain threshold of people engaging with your stuff, it gets really weird.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. I wouldn't know. Like I've had a couple weirdos, a couple, like only a handful of like the issues that like, creators like you who engage in the platform, especially like YouTube, which develop some interesting parasocial vibes. So I assume you're talking about stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I remember for a while after, like, I think my first 3 videos were out, like, if I would go out, like, I'm at a bar with my friends and there'd be people, they'd come up to me and it'd be really nice and they'd be like, oh my God, I saw your thing, etc. And I'd be like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm so flattered. And then, like, while I'm, like, in the middle of a beer, someone wants to, like, engage me on some really hectic topic about, like, the Middle East or, like, what is modern day feminism? And I'm just like, I'm just trying to drink. I don't actually want to talk about this right now.
Like, watch my next video. Like, that's where I'm going to address it.
Yeah, or just to just be like, it would just be getting cornered. And I think I was just like, I'm not actually like an intellectual person. I just was like talking about stuff, and it is nice to meet you, but I don't think our first conversation can be this deep philosophical.
I think from your videos, you definitely come across as a bit of an intellectual. Like, I assume you spend your days reading and have done so for a while.
Yeah, definitely. But I do think it's like, that's like just time and place sort of thing when it comes to like when we discuss that or like.
100%. No, I'm with you. Like the number of times it's been like, 2 a.m. and I'll say for myself, like, the conversation is between two people on cocaine and, social economics and Marxism come up. And it's just not a good conversation. It's just not, no solutions are being found to any of the world's problems, like at the Winston at 2 a.m. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, you're kind of just actually killing my buzz. Like that's what's happening.
So how's that been recognized? Because I assume like that's quite a thing now since your channel's growing a lot, your Twitter, everything. Your numbers are good. Like you're kind of like, I don't know if you see it, but like a micro fashion like influencer celebrity type in my mind, at least.
Internet micro celebrity.
Yes, like in South Africa, yes, I would say that. Like, well, I don't know what the different levels are. I'm just saying you're not like someone on TV, but like people on the internet know who you are.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like I mean, I don't know. It's so weird to talk about like even like a really mild level of like popularity. It feels very like really like. But it is cool. I mean, I'm very thankful for it in that it's gotten me a lot of like really cool opportunities and I've gotten to meet some really interesting and amazing people. So on that side, it's really great. Like, yeah, I've gotten to meet other people who like I've really admired and like they've worked in media forever and ever. And they'll tell me that like, oh, I saw this thing you did. And I'll be like, that's so wild. Like,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, and I kind of get that from watching your videos and seeing some of the comments that are left on it and some of the people who are leaving comments and that on your video and, who you engage with, that you've become like a voice of the community that people respect, but like people who have respectable opinions respect that. So that must be quite, I don't know, just feel really gratifying.
Yeah, no, definitely. Actually, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, it's just always funny to talk about it, but it is really cool. And it is very like validating, I would say. I also, because I'm like one of those people, I think just because I got a lot of criticism as a kid, so I really enjoy feedback, even if it's like not exactly the feedback I want. But if it is from someone whom like I respect or just like someone with like really great insight, it's always really cool to like know that I've said something that could bring that out in someone like who knows stuff or like something.
Yeah, like it's cool to be in the conversation, as they say. But you're a fashion school dropout, from what I understand, from what you said in your videos.
Yeah, dropped out twice.
Yep. Oh wow. Well, what made you go back? Like rather than what like made you drop out twice? What made you go back the second time?
The second time was my parents just being like, please just go to school. I don't understand what you're doing. Because I was like, like to my dad, I was like, oh, I can like write and stuff and I can do all these things. And he's like, that doesn't sound like a real job. I'd at least be like a lot more comfortable if you like just went back to school for a little bit. And he's like, just go try it. Like you like reading, like just go back to school. And so I did for a little bit again. And my issue was never like learning or like test. It was just what I feel like was just a lack of quality in the education I was receiving. Like, yeah, especially compared to like the things I see my friends overseas learning at school, and I'm just like, absolutely not. Like, this doesn't make sense.
Did you feel like you had like just access already to the sound like type of education and material online and through other people that you don't necessarily need to continue with schooling here?
Yeah, definitely. I think most of the stuff I've learned was from internships or just like hands-on stuff or like my own independent research more than anything. Not that I would discount like the value of school, but I think like for me personally, it wasn't necessary. I think there are definitely people that benefits, but like for me, it was just like I was bored. I was really just really bored and frustrated, and it was just like doesn't really make sense to spend so much money here when like I could probably be funneling that into something else.
I get that. I totally get that. I mean, I'm like an autodidact essentially. Like I've learned everything through doing it, through, like starting things through, yeah, like being an assistant somewhere, helping out on this, doing all the different things. And yeah, I totally get that. But it's also understand that education can have its value depending on where you go. But how does the fashion industry like, or did the fashion industry treat you early on in your career then? Because from what I understand, like you've been a fashion journalist for quite a while because you even went to like the Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week when you were in high school. What was that like? Did people like not take you as seriously, or was it still like, people still respected your opinion because they respected your opinion?
That's actually really funny. So like I was like 15 or 16 and I was at like Fashion Week and attending all these little events. But that was like 2012, 2013, which I think was still a really good time for like written media and like blogs. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like you were saying earlier, like if you looked at the numbers then compared to now, like that was a great time to just be online and like yelling into a void. And also that time there
Well,
was
yeah, organic reach existed.
yeah. And like that time, like Tabby Gevinson was a really big thing. And she was like this huge phenomenon. She became like really famous in fashion at like 13 years old. So I think at the time, a lot of people were very willing to like take whatever like upstart young ingenue's person's like opinion pretty seriously. So in that way, it was really cool. So I did get to like, I mean, I hung out with like the people at L for a while and they actually would talk to me like an actual adult speaking to an adult as opposed to like
That's awesome.
some kid here really like shoes or something. So that was like pretty good reception, and like even a lot of people took some very interesting chances on me. Like I think when I was at Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, I was actually working there for a publication, and they like entrusted me at like 14, 15 to like leave school, get home, get changed, and then go report on this stuff and like submit stuff all night and like do their social media and things. Which is
wow.
pretty wild in retrospect, but very cool.
And these days, you mentioned that like your day job's in social media. You don't have to mention where or whatever, but like which section of social media, and yeah.
So I actually work in influencer marketing. So I'm mostly working in a lot of research, strategy stuff. It's very, I mean, having a day job is just always going to be very crazy, to put it lightly. But it is really interesting. I do spend a lot of time just, I mean, it helps like inform everything else I'm interested in. Like I'm always interested in what people are doing online. I'm always interested in, the way technology and the internet is shaping the way we act or the way we shape technology and the internet and how that sort of intertwines together. So it's actually pretty cool for my interests in general because it does sort of align with like my need to be in other people's business. So yeah.
But then how do you feel about like influencer culture like affecting fashion culture essentially? Because I know that's one of the issues that I think you had with the SA Fashion Week side of things. It's that, well, I don't know if it was you or people in your comments, I'm trying to remember now, but basically just that like, yeah, stuff is kind of marketed more towards influencers and then gets repackaged by fast fashion brands for, you know, people at the bottom. And like, it's no longer like actual fashion's no longer accessible in like some ways.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's like two sides to it. I always say, it's really cool that kind of anyone can like enter any sort of realm they want now because of the internet. But on the other hand, you also sort of have this sort of phenomenon where like, I don't think anyone's ever like making clothes anymore with the intention of like dressing people to live in. Like, I don't think people are really considering, you know, that like you need a t-shirt to perform these functions as well as being like really nice to look at. It's a lot of it is just like my friend calls it like screen style more than it is like street style. Like everything's always about what it's going to look like in that like 4:3 ratio, or when you're zooming past something in 3 seconds. And it's like, there's like not as much like craft or like love put into anything anymore. It just needs to capture someone's attention for like 5 seconds while they're scrolling. And it really doesn't go beyond that. I don't even think a lot of people even like think about their own clothes beyond like the one fit pick you get. Like, that's it. And that's like, that's all that really matters about this one garment that you spend money or time on. And that's kind of upsetting. And then with the influencer side, I think it's also like there's this pressure with like not repeating outfits because like you don't want your Instagram feeds to be repetitive, or this idea that like everyone has something new to wear every single day, because obviously influencers, you get gifted stuff all the time, or you make a bunch of money to constantly be buying stuff or doing that, when like that's so completely opposite to how anyone actually really does live or should live. But like, I think we all feel that all the time.
Well, yeah, because I think like what's interesting about modern fashion culture versus like fashion in the past is that style used to be about, you know, cultivating a look that you could repeat, you know, like especially for men and stuff, you know, like understanding what works for you and keeping it simple, having a few pieces in your wardrobe that you can just mix in and out. And nowadays it's like you say, people are scared sometimes to even wear something twice, which is just insane to me. Because like personally, if people are like dope shirts, I'm gonna be like, cool, I'm gonna bring this one out at least once a month, you know? Like I want to get that compliment.
Like, let's see it again.
Exactly. So yeah, I do like, that's the thing. I found that pretty interesting. And also just with brands, especially, you know, like working more with people who aren't necessarily even that fashionable or that stylish, and like because they've got big followings, you know?
Definitely. And that's so funny because I was talking to my friend the other day about this, like how like every couple of days on Twitter, everyone's going to get angry at some celebrity who's being praised as like a fashion icon. And like, there's just this whole outrage parade. And it's like, not everyone has to be a fashion icon. And because we're prioritizing like numbers and clicks more than like personal style or an interesting perspective, you like put these random girls who are just like famous for like doing the Savage remix dance on TikTok in this weird position where like everyone now expects, because of your fame, you have to know every single thing about like what makes personal style, what makes an outfit work, about like which are the designers to be with, when like that's probably not your interest. But these designers need the eyes, they need the reach and the brand awareness, so they're just slapping stuff on you despite the fact that like none of this aligns. And then now you've got everyone just sitting here being like, oh my god, like I hate Gigi Hadid or whatever. And it's just like, that's not that serious.
Although I mean, a part of your whole thing is taking some of these things a bit serious. Like the Harry Styles thing is something you've addressed, like I think like 2 years ago, you know, with the whole just him dressing in a way that makes it seem like it's not even that like flamboyant anyway. Like he's slightly feminine, and you know, it's like groundbreaking and this and that. But then like, I think you addressed the whole thing about the whole topic being about who gets to do it and how they get seen. Because yeah, gay people have been dressing like that way better for way longer and are ostracized because of it. And then now you get someone like Harry Styles, like, you know, just being cis-het-ish, who not like, you know, he like wants to present as bi sometimes. I don't know his whole shtick. I don't know how many like dicks he sucked, but you know, like the way he presents himself is in a certain way. So that's been like a big part of the conversation at the moment. And I just find it interesting that, yeah, that's something you have weighed in on before. And what I wanted to get to with bringing that up is, how do you pick the topics that you'll end up talking about on your blog? Well, on your vlog, sorry.
Yo, what a great question. Do I pick a topic? So before, when I was super, super active, I mean, I was really like chronically online. So I'd spend a lot of time just thinking about like whatever's in the zeitgeist at the moment. So like with the rich anesthetic, everyone had been talking about it for weeks. The Harry Styles thing, everyone had been talking about it for weeks. So it had kind of been, a lot of it had just been like, let me see what everyone's talking about and then see how this relates to the things that I do already know or the things I can easily learn about. But now I'm at a point where I'm kind of hoping to get a little bit more gosh, I'm at a loss for it. But I kind of want to look at things that like no one is talking about at the moment. So like currently I'm doing a lot of very difficult research into like South African fashion in like the 20th century. Like who were the designers then? What were the trends? What were the scandals? You know, what are the cool subcultures then? Like a thing I even came across recently was the like first settlers in Cape Town. Like once it started becoming more than a port town, the women, they used to have like really hectic like style wars that they would do, and they would be having like balls every week with the hope to like outdo each other, and they have all these like strict rules of like etiquette and social class. Like you could have been born from the same kind of like family as like your best friend, like you guys have the same like economic status, but because maybe your father was a general, you outrank her, but then she's going to marry someone who outranks your dad. And then now when you guys see each other in public, like you have to greet her first, or you can't wear a pearl necklace that's bigger than hers, you know, something like that. And I just think that's really interesting. So that's like sort of where I'm looking at.
I was gonna say, like, the things like people could do when, you know, they had more time because they weren't on social media all the time. But that does actually just sound like being on social media to a degree. So
right? It's like everything keeps going back to the same thing. It's like literally like they just had like flex culture the same way we kind of do now. Like
but what's like trying to find information like that? And I would imagine also like, yeah, within Black culture, because I imagine like there's obviously a lot of documentation, but a lot of it would have also been destroyed and also not necessarily preserved as well. So how's that hunt been going for you?
It's really difficult, honestly. Even with this a story about these settlers in Cape Town, like there are no images. I just have like I've got like texts and like books and little paragraphs and stuff about it, but like there's no images to actually see what this looked like. I can't find any like paintings or that kind of thing. When it comes to trying to figure out like what Black people were up to, it's so crazy. Like it's a lot of it is like I think I'd have to personally go somewhere and ask someone's grandmother to like tell me, or like go through someone's like personal family photo album. And the things that I think that are sort of maintained or stored are like at like private libraries that you've got to get like super special access, or you have to know someone who knows someone to, you know, go in there. And even when you're there, you're not even allowed to like take photos or like screenshots or anything. And there's the stuff, obviously actually not surprising, but like there's a lot of stuff that's like in the British Museum, but it's not like labeled properly, or it's not like, you know, there's not a lot of care taken to it. Like I found a whole trove of like belts and jewelry that had been taken from, I think like the Eastern Cape in like the early 1800s, but all of this stuff is just labeled as like Xhosa artifact or whatever. Like no sort of provenance, or like no care taken to like who was wearing this, or what was this used for, or how was this made, or what is this even made for. It's just like, here's a bunch of stuff that we looted.
Fuck yeah, I get you there. But at least I would assume with the later 20th century, there's more magazines and stuff like that to give you like, and also I guess a bit more like actual footage, but I don't know how much of that is online. Have you been able to get like source that sort of stuff?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's really hard to find like online things, even things that I know existed. Like if I wanted to see like an Owl magazine from 2009, I don't even think I could find that on like archive.org. Like I'd actually have to just go find a physical copy. Which actually part of the reason why like I wanted to start my YouTube channel was that I felt like no one's keeping like an online archive of all the stuff that's happening. Like I think about like how even like the places I used to write for when I was younger, those things are like, those websites are shut down, and like I wasn't cognizant enough to like keep a copy of some of those things. So I'm just thinking about like how many, even in like our modern era, there are so many cool things that are happening, but like outside of having had been there, or if you can find like one random Facebook post from 10 years ago, like it also just sort of virtually ceases to exist, which really sucks because there's so many amazing things, but it's like really hard to find an online archive of this or even build an online archive of it either.
Yeah, it's interesting because even with like modern like stuff, and I know this just from my own website with Durban is yours and that, like I chose to shut it down and it basically only really exists in archive.org. And thankfully I've still got like a lot of that stuff. Like just like I've been posting a lot of photos on my Instagram and stuff from like back in the day and everything like that. But that's like recent history. And I look for other websites and other places when I'm looking, because I'm writing some stuff at the moment that deals with like the time period of like the 2000s and early 2010s. And thankfully, I've got like stacks of like Blunt magazines and SL magazines. So like I know the bands and like, you know, like I can reference stuff well through that. But like when I look online, a lot of that time period doesn't actually exist. And that's like crazy because that's so recent. So yeah, like I get how difficult it must be. And I also was going to chat to you about the need for archiving this sort of stuff, because you're archiving current stuff, but you also do like reference a lot of history and you do bring a lot of research to your videos, which I think is really important.
Yeah, it just sucks because I think I also get why no one really does archive stuff. It's like, it's a lot of work.
And it
and it's
costs
already
money to host stuff.
Yeah, and I don't even think, and it's not the kind of thing I think anyone would really pay you for. It's not a service. I can't imagine someone trying to open like a fashion library, even if it was online, and like getting any sort of revenue for the amount of work they would have to put in. It's not only building that, but like maintaining that and keeping that up. It's also kind of like thankless work. I don't imagine, like even when I am always looking for stuff, it's so hard to find sources. You know, like I'll see a really great image of like, here is like Khensani culture in 2009, but like, where did you get this image? Who are these people? Like, what was this for? And it's just like people just like reblogging this because like it's a pretty picture, which is fine, but it's like a really big challenge.
Yeah, once it's run through like the Pinterest and Tumblr machine, like it's impossible sometimes to even find out who actually did the original.
Yeah, which is so sad because there's probably way more you could learn once you find that, like, you know.
I mean, that's where original sources, I guess, are like a thing you might need to look into.
Yeah, trying.
Okay, so personally, like I just never want to get into video when it comes to doing these sorts of things. Like I like, you know, creating just audio content because it's a lot easier with the editing. So what's that process like for you? Because I know you're always introducing with this should have been done 3 weeks ago, this should have been done 4 weeks ago. And then also wanted to know is how much scripting goes into it, because it seems like really well articulated.
Yeah, the scripting is like the longest part. Honestly, I can spend anywhere from like 2 days to like 3 weeks writing something.
Okay, yeah, the 2 days isn't long, the 3 weeks is.
Yeah. Yeah, the biggest challenge is that obviously I can't like write. I can't speak the way I write. So after I've like written a bunch of stuff, and I'm also like, as time has gone, I'm very deathly afraid of not saying something in a really balanced way. You know, just because I read every comment and everyone's like, you forgot to mention this, and well, you didn't include that. So like, part of it is I'm sitting there like, okay, how do I say this that's going to acknowledge like every race, gender, da, 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 da. But once I get over that, then I'm just like thinking about like how what I've written doesn't sound natural to speak. So then I've got to go back, try get this in like a regular speaking person's cadence and not like a robot, just, you know, like regurgitating stuff.
Yeah, no, that's the struggle with YouTube. Like, a lot of people don't get down. It's like you can tell that it's written. You always like, you know, like not so much. It's just there's no ways I could imagine someone just knowing all that stuff off the top of their head.
Absolutely not. You know, one time I got this one comment and someone was like, "It feels like you're giving a monologue," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's a video essay."
Yeah, that's literally the process. That's what it is.
Like I'm not having a conversation. I'm telling you some stuff I put together. But yeah, the scripting is the longest part. Editing is also really cool, and I actually wish I could do audio, but I'm like, passion's very visual as well, so I'm like, I think it does help to incorporate that. So yeah.
It's also video, you just get way more reach, like especially with YouTube. Like it's more people engage with that. audio only stuff is for a specific like audience. Like it's for people who like listening to like people talk whilst they are doing the dishes, you know, or on the way to work, that sort of thing.
But it's funny. That's how most people treat YouTube videos as well. Like,
I
I think even
guess.
like with myself, like every video essay, like I'm never actually looking at the screen.
I do, hey, like it depends, but like with a lot of people. But I guess I also watch like a lot of video essays on movies and stuff like that, and like with visual stuff in it. Like I'm never going to watch like a podcast. That's not for me. Like I'm not gonna sit there and watch three guys talk shit. But like if you research something and you're telling me about it with like some visuals, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very either or. Like, I could watch a whole video about a movie and not look at the screen once and be like, what a great experience. I really like how they spoke about the scene, the set design there that I didn't see.
Yeah, there's these things called podcasts, right? You could just engage with those. One of the things, that I found interesting, like when you were chatting about the Richard Nisi, why does it need to be that expensive thing, was like your politics. And, you said like, your socialist dreams essentially. And like, I think that's one of the interesting things coming through with your work is that like, you believe that fashion should be obviously accessible, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to just be, casual wear. Like that's what I think is really interesting.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit more about that with your philosophies when it comes to like, because I know throughout history, like fashion was something that the working class had better access to, I guess, and also more information on and partook in a bit more, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was definitely like a more. I want to say it's like it belonged to the community, even if you didn't like have access necessarily to like the finest of things. I think even when I look at my parents, like I think there was more of an understanding, like everyone understood like the amount of effort and care that went into clothing. I think everyone had a basic understanding of like, why something looks the way it does, or how something's supposed to fit, or like how you're supposed to wash certain items. And that also, I mean, I think when things were a lot smaller and less globalized, you were a lot closer to the people also who were making and producing the things you wear. So I think you had a more intimate understanding of that. And also just because, especially I think in a lot of like African societies, like cloth and like clothing has such a communicative aspect to it. It is, it's something people use, like there's special meanings for certain prints on special days, or there's the reason why we wear certain things to certain events or commemorating stuff, which is something I wish a lot of us had more. And I don't think that it means we all have to like wear crazy ball gowns every day. But I think there's something very beautiful about like wearing someone's like labor and effort and culture and history on you all the time, because that's the only place you can kind of carry that with you all the time. Like you can't always carry a giant like painting or a sculpture with you, but like you can wear a pair of pants that were very laboriously made to highlight something special about you or your people or where you're from. And I think that's an amazing thing to like have with you all the time.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to bring up. There's actually an exhibition on at the moment at the KZNSA that they've got some pieces from the Panzi Museum, which is a museum here in Durban that I recommend everyone checks out when they can. But basically, it's like pieces of like skirts and just traditional wear that also they say, the different meanings behind each one. And there's even like this one massive, basically it's like a shawl of sorts that has beads and mirrors all over it, because the woman would walk around in areas where there were wild animals. And so the mirrors would actually scare those animals off. And I just find that sort of stuff really fascinating. But like you were saying, that's made by multiple people as well. Like the hands involved in that is, it's a lot of work, which still exists today, but you don't really see it, which I think is one of the things that you brought up in your video about, is fashion art essentially, is that it's such a massive amount of people actually involved in, fashion, yet it's kind of just the designer who gets all the credits and like gets credited as the artist, which I found to be quite an interesting argument to bring up.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not even always necessarily just the people like physically making the stuff, but it's also like the people around you. Like I always tell everyone that like, even if you don't know, you're like a really direct player in the fashion industry. Like even today, like the fact that you chose to buy a red shirt instead of a whatever color shirt, like you impact the decision making of so many other people. Like you actually have a say in everything that gets made and produced around you. And the same way that like all of us, when we decide this is our moral grandstanding as a society, like we all play a part in informing like the kind of clothes that will get made or how they get made, or when things get worn and stuff. Like we all play a really really active part, but we're all I think sort of tricked into thinking that like we're either just like really passive consumers who just buy the stuff, or just wear whatever's comfortable because we're not into fashion, or we're the laborers or something. But it's like all of us actually are involved in this whole industry like since the beginning of time.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing to bring up. It's almost like the Devil Wears Prada speech, but not quite, because she's a bit more like, you wear this stuff because we decided it. But like her main point is just that, yeah, like it's like impossible to take yourself out of the fashion industry. And it's weird because for me, when I was younger, like I definitely had a bit of like an anti-fashion sentiment, but like because I was punk in my mind, didn't like and some actions, but mostly just in my mind. And like it's interesting because Vivienne Westwood, like, created the punk aesthetic with a boy band, like in the Sex Pistols, basically. And it's just funny to me, like how even the ideology of like being anti-fashion is still a fashion choice, and it's not even just like one that's like anti-fashion. It's actually in a lot of ways literally still engaging in the industry.
Yeah, 100%.
Like I don't know how you could, like, other than if you're wearing like sackcloth, like I don't know if you can like remove yourself from it.
Yeah, you literally would have to like live on an island and be naked. I think that's the only way.
One thing I actually wanted to ask you, just speaking of like this kind of stuff, is you were mentioning in one of your videos about like going and chatting to designers and getting them, to make stuff with you. And you're also someone who makes their own clothes. So how does that work? Like, when do you decide like, hey, I'm going to make this thing myself? Or when do you decide you want to go chat to somebody else?
So I usually often decide to make things myself just because everything I like is so expensive. Which I'm not knocking. I definitely also, as having had tried to make these things myself, I do see why these things are really expensive. Like I'm very familiar with the amount of like work and labor and skill that goes into these things. But
I would imagine.
Yeah, but the thing I've gotten into recently, like I'm trying to support a few more local designers. So like I have a little savings fund I have. So like I think my plan this year is I'll probably buy like 3 items. And I just look at people making the kind of things that even if I had all the time in the world, one, I could never ever make, just because like that's just not in my skill set, that's not in my ability, and that's also isn't like an idea that I couldn't ever come up with myself. And also like I just think you have a lot of really great
respect to the artistry.
Yeah. So that's me right now. But the sucky thing about that is like every time I save up for something, it like gets sold out. Like I spent all of last year preparing to buy one of like Tebe Magugu's sister boots, the church sister boots or something. And as soon as I had the money, like they were gone, and I was just like, wow, damn.
Well, at least now you've got the money, or you had the money saved for like the next piece you would want. But I imagine you might have not kept that money and might have spent it on some other pieces that you wanted.
Yeah. December came at me very
fast. I get you there. So would that be something that you'd recommend to people who are looking to get into fashion and like look at it as being like, I can only afford, the Mr. Price chinos or whatever, and like say like, oh, I can't engage with fashion the way other people can because it's not affordable. Like you save up basically. So like, yeah, what are some of the tips and tricks for doing this on a budget?
Okay, so like my one thing is like I'm always online shopping, but I'm never really buying anything. I just do like a lot of window shopping just to get an idea of like what are the things that I like. And because things will sit in my cart for so long, I've got a good enough amount of time to really think about like, do I really want this item? Is it going to make sense for like the things I already own? Do I have the ability to take care of it? Like I know like I'm never going to buy anything that's like pure silk because I'm not going to a dry cleaner. Like I'm not doing that. That just seems absolutely cumbersome. I barely like to leave the house. So, that's like, so I have time to think about that. I get over the initial excitement of seeing something really pretty. And then I've got time to think about it. And also in the time that I'm like saving for something, I can really justify this purchase in my mind. And also I won't be buying as often because I'm like, yeah, I could go to Zara and like buy this 1,000 Rand coat now, but that's like 1,000 Rand less that I have for the, I don't know, like the Mimi flats that I've been wanting for 5 years or something. So I think it's always like people just need to also like, I think there's this feeling we all have like when we're shopping that you have to get something straight away, but like you really don't. Like you can, well, hopefully most times you can wait for something. And the really cool thing is that if you do buy like from any sort of like local high-end contemporary designers, like these people can just make these things again for you, like you can often probably just ask someone like, hey, could you do this skirt again? And if they have like, they still have the fabric or the materials, they could probably just do that for you. And then, there's the item. And it's just also a matter of like, you also have to consider how long something is probably going to last you and like the kind of like value and joy it'll bring to you. I knew this one girl, like she would drop, I think like 10,000 Rand at Zara. And I'm sure at Zara, that was probably like 7, 8 items that she would also probably get bored of in a couple of months. Like she wouldn't wear them again, or she'd like want to pass them on to like one of us or something. And I'm just like, if you had maybe spent that entire 10,000 Rand on like 2 items from, why am I forgetting like a local designer? Like 2 items from like Rich and Nisi or someone, or 2 items from Selfie, like really beautiful items, and how they were made, and that they're produced really well, and there's like really great quality, and you're going to be one of like the only people in the world who has this. Like that probably would have been a better long-term investment, even though you were probably getting, I guess, like more quote-unquote value for money at Zara, but like in the long run, you're probably going to treasure those items way more and keep them for a much longer time.
Okay, so for someone who's like not initiated necessarily in quality and like price, essentially, how do you know the difference essentially, between like 1,000 Rand Zara jacket and a 5,000 Rand, like, I don't know, like, well, say a 2.5 grand Soul jersey, because I know that there's a 2.5 grand Soul jersey, so we'll use them as an example here. So how do we know the difference between like the 1 grand Zara jersey and their jersey? Like how am I meant to know which is better quality?
Ooh, Zara is a tricky one to bring up because they actually do produce pretty well. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. Compared to like most of your like fast fashion retailers, their stuff's actually not too bad. But the unfortunate thing about that is that it's kind of a thing it takes a lot of time to learn and distinguish, especially because I think most of us, especially if you're like born after like 1995, you're not actually really used to dealing with like really high quality clothing. You know what I mean? Like I think my first shopping experience was Mr. Price when I was like 10.
Yep.
Just immediately in fast fashion. Like it's not like I think with like our parents or anything where things that they did buy were still really good quality. Like there's a lot you have to consider about like looking at how like the quality of the fabric, like how does it feel, if there's things like a washing label inside, because anyone who's making something really well wants to make sure that you take care of it after you've bought it. So they would try and give you some sort of care instructions. Things like how the stitching is done, are they like skip stitches? Are they loose? Is there like puckering or wrinkles in the fabric where it shouldn't be? Have things been like overlocked? Like is the fabric like fraying and falling apart? Even like the quality of like the buttons used, like, plastic versus metal, or like zippers as well, like plastic versus metal. Like metal zippers generally tend to last longer and they don't get stuck on everything as much, which is also why they're absolutely awful to replace. But and things like, like you kind of it's like you kind of, everyone would have to get like a teensy little bit of a fashion education to sort of understand the kind of things that go into making a garment really good quality, which is also why I always advocate to like anyone who's like a young designer to like make sure they're taking the time to like educate their audience on like the exact things they're doing in their like construction process to make sure that they're building something to last. Like things like if the stitches are really small, then that's something that's not gonna fall apart really quickly. Like it's really tight, it's gonna hold together for a really long time. If someone gives you something with an extra button in it, like they're planning for you to keep this item for longer. Lots of like very small niche things like that.
Well, what's interesting about like everything you're saying here, like, is that those are also all just good principles for like thrifting. And I assume you do thrift a bit as well, and that this knowledge would have been is very helpful when you go and like, try find pieces, because like a quality piece off like off the rack a lot better than I imagine a lot of other people would.
Yeah, definitely. But kind of sad about thrifting is I think if you were going thrifting like 4 or 5 years ago, you were kind of guaranteed that the majority of the things you would find like automatically pretty good quality, outside of maybe like having some stains or rips or anything. But now I think if you go thrifting, you're gonna find things that are like from Shein or from Rumway or from like you're gonna see like
It's
Mr.
all
Price.
about the old dead people. Like that's like if someone like recently died, I want their wardrobe. Like I don't want young people's like stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, you're right. But that's like getting increasingly difficult to find. Like, yeah, it's getting much more difficult. Like, I'm not even sure I would still recommend thrifting to people now as like a really good alternative to trying to find like good quality clothing. Unless, depending on if you're willing to let some like Instagram resellers charge you like 800% markup.
Yeah, that's kind of been my issue with thrifting, because it's something like I've done throughout my life just because, hey, cheap clothes. Like, it's kind of been necessary and helpful, and also like it gives me more access to a wider variety of clothing across a like larger time period, basically. Like I'm not typically into whatever's in the stores most of the time. It's very rare that like I find something that I like. Like that's it's just me. Like I'm just particular in that way. But there's a lot more options when you go. Well, there used to be a lot more options when you would go thrifting back in the day, and stuff would be cheap. And now it's basically being gentrified. Like I've seen how like there's thrifting conventions like in America and stuff, where people are literally flying across the country to sell each other thrifted clothes at a markup, and it just goes against the whole principles of everything involved in like the ideas of thrifting, which is also about making stuff last and not like adding to the supply chain anymore, or like the production chain, just any fucking chain. Like you're just like, hey, this thing already exists, let me add it to my closet for cheap. And yeah, a lot of people are fucking up that vibe. That's just my own personal rant there.
No, you're right. I 100% agree. It's really frustrating because I think like in an ideal world, because there's always a lot of people who like come to me and they're like how you develop like a personal style, or like getting
Good question.
like a signature uniform look. And like for me, the best way to learn that was to experiment. And I think at least like thrifting is sort of like the least harmful way to do that, because yeah, you can buy some old clothes, you'll figure some things out, and then like going forward, you know what you like, you don't like, and it was sort of this like low cost way to sort of engage with fashion. But it's like now it's not that, and there's even I think it's funny that you're saying that like there used to be so many options, but I feel like now if I look online at like thrift resellers or stuff, it's like there's sort of like a sort of a single look to the kind of thrifted items you can get. Like everyone's kind of trying to do best find thrift items that'll best imitate like whatever trend's going on right now. And that's not necessarily why I would want to thrift. If I wanted to buy whatever was trendy right now, then I would just go to Mr. Price. Like they've already done the trend research. It's cool. I was hoping to actually go see some different silhouettes alternative to what I'm being offered, to see if there's something there that I like more. And because it's getting so expensive, like you're not really getting that ability to like play around and experiment as much anymore, unless you're willing to spend a lot of money on it.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I know there's people who are listening to this podcast now who both work at Mr. Price and who do the thrift selling, and I think some of them do both those things. So shout outs to you guys, I guess. But no shade. It is just like, yeah, I do miss the old days of being able to go to the piles like in town and like not see like other white people. But maybe that's just me, like being a hipster.
I get it. Yeah, I get it. What you do? It's a free market.
Yeah, literally. Hey, but at least I'm not the one getting my phone pickpocketed, so it's all good. One of the things I've got written down here is that you said that all t-shirts are dresses. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
I think that was when I was talking about sort of like the gendering of clothing, and like how it's really arbitrary. Like it's
Yeah.
It's really silly. I think a lot of us think clothing has to work in like strictly like man, woman, when what it actually comes down to is just like body shape. And there's nothing really about your gender that's gonna dictate what your body shape is. So what you think is a masculine t-shirt because it's, I don't know, has like really big sleeves or it buttons right over left is still just a t-shirt, and I might wear it as a dress and it is still the same item, but we've just decided that these are two completely different things, or we're going to put them in different parts of the store. When like what really, the only thing that really matters in like sort of categorizing clothing is like, if this has to go over boobs, like how is it doing that? If this has to go over hips, how is that doing that? And every people of all genders have both of those things to varying proportions and sizes, you know?
Yeah.
I know lots of flat chested women. I know lots of really curvy dudes, you know? So there's really nothing stopping them from buying like a mini skirt or anything except for these like fun little ways that we decide to like really strictly define where clothing should be in a shop or on a runway.
But yeah, it's like one of the things that you've said in your videos. I think it was the same video. It's basically that it's all fabric. We're the ones who just give it meaning.
Yeah, pretty much. Which can be very cool sometimes. But you know, meaning is cool because like you get to change it whenever you want, you know.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, at the same time, it does like, well, I guess what's the question I would get to with a whole long diatribe that I'd say before that is how much of like your own dress is, you know, politically minded?
What do you mean?
Well, like, you know, you do have an old fashioned style with modern flaring in that. And I imagine that might, you know, in a modern context, have, especially to other people, connotations. Like, I don't necessarily know because I don't know what you're trying to communicate. I just think you look dope. But like, I imagine there's thoughts behind what you're trying to do.
I wish there was because I am actually just trying to look dope. No, for real. Like I just like I was like I was like a super girly girl growing up. So I was always like my dream job when I grew up was to be a princess, and like fashion was the one way for me to like.
Okay, so that's the way you dress. Like, I get that. Okay.
Yeah, it's the way for me to gauge. But it is interesting when I do meet other people and the ways they react to it is always it's always really. Yeah, let me say interesting because I don't really know what to assess of all of these reactions I've gotten. Like, on one hand, I have had people come to me and they're also assuming there's like some political statement about it. They're like, you know, you're like, it's like it's something about like decolonization, or it's like this pro-black message, or you're claiming the things that like our ancestors couldn't have. Or I've had like my one friend's mom was like, I still haven't decided if this was offensive or not, but she was like, you look like a slave.
Oh wow,
that's an interesting thing to say to me. I didn't even know what to say. I was like, I guess. And yeah, it's just it is. I think the interesting part about it is seeing how it makes other people react. That's always very enlightening for me to see what kind of reactions is inside. For some people, I think it's like sort of painful, or it's like they might think it's sort of some sort of whitewashing or some embrace of like Eurocentrism. Some people might just see it as like fairy tale vibes, super hyper feminine, girly. It's like, you know, that kind of vibe. Or like, you know, some people might think it's like a course correcting thing. Whereas to me, I'm just like, I like girly stuff and I'm a history nerd. And this is the one place where these things come together.
But at the same time, it is kind of all those things. Like, because I mean, like, yeah, because it's all inherently political. And so I understand why people get those messages from it. Because I mean, I've got friends who, do harken back to like old school colonial styles as a way to repurpose it, you know, as a way to be like, yeah, fuck you, this is mine now. And like, I think that's cool. But like, yeah, you just want to be a princess.
Yeah, definitely. And there's like a saying in like the costuming community. So other people who are really into like reenactments and, you know, wearing like vintage antique clothing. And it's like I've got vintage style, but not vintage values. So yeah, as much as I might to you look like I'm dressed like a colonizer, which is fine, I guess.
Ironic. Oh yeah, that's funny.
It doesn't necessarily mean that I desperately want to go back to the 1880s and like not have indoor plumbing and alienate a whole group of people.
Yeah, no, but the fashion's still cool. Like, I mean, I'm with you there. Like, I think it's interesting that there is certain style and there's certain ideas that have lasted throughout history, and it is cool to touch on them, and it's also cool to bring them into a modern context so that strangers can go, "What are you doing?"
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It always leads to really interesting conversations. Like I think this one time, like this girl was telling me how I reminded her so much of her grandmother, and her grandmother was like one of the first women, like back, I think even before apartheid, who like had owned her own business or something like that. And I was like, oh, I got to hear a really cool story about this. So it's really, so that's a really cool part, and I even don't mind the funnier comments because it's always something to think about, like the kind of long held beliefs we'll associate with any item of clothing. Like
Yeah.
the fact that like every time people see, like when people think that they have to wear something for like a red carpet or a black tie event, everyone always goes back to this 1950s silhouette. And
Yep.
there's just something about that era that forever and ever we're just always going to associate it with like the height of glamour. Even though there's always been some version of glamour through every decade, but there's just something about that era specifically that really makes us go, okay, this is formal, this is like black tie, this is elegant. It's very cool and interesting.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's been an amazing lesson. It's kind of like watching, your videos, because your videos have been super informative. I've learned so much from them. But that does bring us towards the end of the podcast, where I'm going to ask you a question I ask everybody, and that is, what is a big mistake that you've learned an important lesson from?
Ooh, yay, exciting. Um,
You're the first person to respond like that. I'll tell you that much. Usually
listen to the
everyone's just like,
podcast. I'm like,
oh, fuck. Okay, so you came prepared.
yeah, it's finally my turn. I'm up. I'm up. I'm up.
I like it.
My big mistake that I've learned a lesson from was definitely trying to start a business as a teenager. Um,
Oh, wow. I mean,
yeah,
I
that
did
was
KTV Market Day.
yeah. I was like 17 and I was like, I think I know a bunch of stuff and it doesn't seem that hard. And I really persuasive. I got a lot of people to entrust me with money and time and things and completely screw that up. Like just no understanding of like quality control, customer service, how to like do accounting and like taxes and stuff, and also just making absolute garbage just because I believe
Did,
so strongly in like my vision.
had you not seen Gossip Girl yet? Like, did you not see what
Yes,
happened to
I have.
Jenny?
Of course. Yeah. Dad, you gotta let me go to fashion school, please, Dad. Like,
Yeah, so you kind of live that yourself a little bit.
yeah, definitely. And failed miserably, like absolutely astronomically. Like, even to this day, I'm still kind of embarrassed of it. I'm like, wow, if I had just waited a little bit, if I had thought to maybe learn from someone else or ask someone else something, it's even led me to like my personal philosophy, like that I don't think anyone like under the age of like 35 should ever like start any kind of fashion business. It is such a it's such a volatile, like tumultuous like place to work in that I think you really it's one of those places where you actually really, really, really have to like learn a lot before you can do anything. Like ever.
Well, at least like you learned like a really hard lesson young. Like, I think that's a good time to learn it because it sticks.
I mean, I hope so.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like, yeah, like, what's it? Like, just expressions of hubris like that. Yeah, from falling flat on your face from it is definitely something that humbles you.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess it is good that I had like lost all that money before I had like I don't know, like bills or rent to pay.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. There's been people on this podcast who've lost like R1 million when they've had like mortgages. So you did good.
Yeah. Oh my god, I think I'd actually collapse.
Yeah, I mean, I would just walk into the ocean, so I wouldn't have a mortgage or a house to worry about anymore. But anyway, that's a bit dark. Uh, cool. On that note, yeah, I'm gonna say thank you very much. This has been a great chat, and I really enjoyed actually getting to chat with you personally because I feel like I know your vibe pretty well, and you said you've listened to the podcast, and you clearly have. So like, I feel like with like two people who are having a parasocial relationship with each other that's come together.
Yeah, it's really cool. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Oh no, an absolute pleasure. So that was Khensani. Told you she's fucking dope, man. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and I suggest you go check out her YouTube channel if you'd like more. Links will be in the description of the show. You'll also be able to find her Twitter and Insta and all of that, which once again I recommend checking out. And a reminder that if you enjoy the work that we do here, and by we I mean it's mostly me. Mostly. They mostly come at night. Mostly. As I was saying, yeah, a lot of the work, most of the work on this podcast is done by myself. And if you would like to support it, you can go to patreon.com/almostperfect, where you can support it for as little as $1 a month, which is about 17 Rand at the moment, I think. So like under $20 a month, it's less than a fucking dumpy, people. Like literally, like you could just buy me a beer. That's it. If you were like, hey, I enjoyed that podcast enough to buy Bob a beer, you can do that. You can do that no matter where in the world you are. You just go to patreon.com/almostperfect. If you'd like to buy me a band key, that's there as well. That's the $5 fucking thing. Yeah, it's only a $5,000 band key, but still, that's not too bad. And then there's another $10 section, which we'll get into just now. It's called the titular titles tier. It's a $10 tier, and I will tell you about it just now. And if you would like to bring the Almost Perfect branding into your life, the logo that I made in 5 minutes on Canva, then you can go to almostperfect.co.za and check out the merch button there. There are t-shirts and there are mugs. There are only a couple mugs left, and probably won't be doing those again for a while because they've been slow sellers. So maybe you'll get to have limited edition mugs, because who knows, it might never be repeated again. Over at almostperfect.co.za with maybe /merch, maybe /chop. I wasn't planning on doing a whole long fucking pitch here, but hey, I would like to eat better this year. Let's just say that. Oh shit, speaking of which, I was trying to think of what I wanted to tell you. As some of you may know, last month started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then yesterday I started training with my friend John O'Button, who's been a friend of mine since I was very young, since like 12 probably. And he actually taught me kickboxing when I was a teenager because I was getting bullied at school. And I'll tell you one thing, I got bullied a hell of a lot fucking less after that. And yeah, at the beginning of the year, he hit me up and he was like, yo, come train with me. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, but yeah, I'm doing that now. And so yesterday we did some boxing. We did just boxing, but like we did about 5 minutes of boxing after like a fucking 55 minutes of working the fuck out. So I am dead. I am sore. I am tired, and I'm looking forward to going back because yeah, fuck, it was a lot of fun. The sparring and that, like, it's so annoying how fucking quick he is. Like, I was throwing punches and I was pretty sure they were at his head, but when my fist was there, his head was not. And instead, his fist was in my fucking ribs. So, we're gonna be learning some hard lessons, but I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, basically, yeah, you can look forward to seeing me in the octagon in the UFC in about 6 months, but shit, Nah, in all seriousness, like, I don't plan on ever being in another fight in my life. This is just a great way to get fit, and, you know, martial arts are always useful to know, just if you ever need them. But, like, obviously the principle behind pretty much every fucking martial arts is, hey, don't fight if you can't help it. If it's unavoidable, then hey, at least you have some necessary tools. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to get strong, bro. I'm just trying to get fucking fit for the pit. And yeah, connect with the old homie, and actually just also connect with a history of sports and of a culture, and just learn more, because fuck it, life is too short to not just try everything. Speaking of which, I might as well share this with you, since I'm pretty sure half of Durban already knows. I've started dating again. I've been going on dates. It's been good. It's been interesting. It's been fun. I've been having cool conversations with cool women, and yeah, just, it's, you know, like, obviously different, and I don't know how. I'm definitely not emotionally available, but like I'm being pretty open about that, pretty honest about that. Like, I'm letting people know the vibe that, hey, like, going through a bit of a traumatic midlife crisis / breakup thing at the moment. But if you would like some fun company, some interesting conversation, hey, maybe we can chat. If not, then no harm, no foul. Like, I'll be honest with you, I am not in any way, shape, or form looking for a relationship at the moment, and probably not for quite some fucking time, because there be fucking very deep scars, man. Like, I know I've been super publicly facingly chilled, but the whole being dumped after giving like your all to someone for 8 years really does make you not necessarily want to give your all to anyone else for the foreseeable fucking future. But I'll give an appropriate amount to the appropriate people at the appropriate times, and we'll see how that goes. As long as nobody falls in love with me, I think we should be able to get through the next couple months, having some fun, having some good times. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. I'm talking about fucking people. I'm talking about fucking. That's it. I just want to get laid, whilst also being cool about it. Can we do that? Can I have my ethical slut era? Is that allowed? Because I had an unethical slut era. So let's actually end that right there. I think I am about to share far too many things with far too much of a public, and we're not there yet, people. We don't have that kind of relationship just yet. As I said, the appropriate amounts with the appropriate people. So I am instead going to head on out by giving some shout outs to the titular titles tier over at patreon.com/almostperfect, which is a tier. It's a $10 tier, and is the top tier where you get to pick your title right here on the podcast, and I shout it out every week. So shout outs to Stephen Olivier, our executive producer, Kath Jenkin, the inevitable ruler of the universe and Queen Swifty, Karan Chetty, the assistant to the regional manager, Riz Ventura, the director of purchasing, Karan Slemon, the almost perfect hedge fund manager, Neil Green, the key grip, Russell Grant, the Far East correspondent, Rousseau, the storage clerk of subtle heresies in the Lesser Overberg region. And a big thank you to Damien Root for the bed music you hear underneath me and the banging fucking intro you hear each and every single week. A big shout out to you for listening all the way through to the end. And I will catch you on the flip side.